Welcome to Creatives in Quarantine. I'm Tiwana Floyd, your host. This week, I talked to my first career coach, Janice Hoffman of Success is Sweetest. I worked with Janice in New York City over 15 years ago, and we have stayed in touch. I still use her positive psychology tools for my acting career. Janice is a gem. Here's Janice.
Maybe 10 to 20 people whose Facebook pages feel really intentional, but in a way that's not trying to sensationalize and trying to say, look at me, but saying, these are things that I like. And I think that's because I feel like Instagram is like, photo books like we used to have years ago when people would come over and they just peruse. So I love your Instagram because, yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, it's not branded in terms of my coaching, which is what I like as a good business person, it should be, but it isn't because I'm also a photographer. So, amateur. And that just happens to be the place that I tell that story, that photo story. And right now, this probably would be like it definitely is one of my creative projects, but I'm really obsessed with New York right now because of the story that everyone's telling about it, that it's dead. Yeah. And two, it's broken. It's really good. This has been a really major blow. Mm-hmm. It's been really devastating for the city. And I've just been really trying to do these really tiny macro photo essays. So I used to just photography, and now I'm trying to do photography and like little essays. So you might notice little by little, you'll start to see very, very New York City centric storytelling. I've done everything from pigeons to yesterday I did Brighton Beach. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It kind of happened very intuitively, but I'm way more clear. So it's definitely getting more intentional.
Yeah. How do you organize your shoot sessions? Is it just...
I take my camera with me everywhere, first off. And that's really, as a photographer, anyone knows. And I certainly talked to your dad, we had this conversation a lot. Mm-hmm. That, if you don't have your camera, then you're going to miss that shot. And so I went last year and I got myself a little camera, bigger than an iPhone because it's a better camera. But it's like that. It's so easy to take with me. So it is in my backpack all the time. And I just shoot a lot. And sometimes it's just light. Mm-hmm. I'm inspired by just the time of day. And sometimes it's what's happening on the street. It's definitely street photography. Yeah. It's always street photography. And so, I take hundreds and only usually one or two actually comes out. That's just the truth about photography, is that we see these extraordinary photographers and then you listen to a lecture with them and they go, I shoot 1,000 photos a day. Wow. And I got one or two. So that's kind of what I do. I have my camera with me all the time and I shoot a lot.
Okay, that makes sense. My boyfriend also is a street photographer, and everywhere we go, he's got his camera. If we just walk into Trader Joe's, he's got his camera. And at first I was like, we're just going to Trader Joe's. But now as you're explaining it, he's explained it to me as well. It's like you could miss any moment. And so now I get it. And it does make sense because as he's building his gallery, he's got so many things to choose from.
Yes.
From daily walks.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And it's probably like this in LA also. But one thing that's really happening in New York is there's a lot of street art. Yeah. Like a lot of people are talking on the walls, right. Saying things. And I'm like, I've been really obsessed with that because that's going to get torn down or painted over. Yeah. And it's really about this time, this shift. And it's also a very political time. It's also very, people are feeling very disenfranchised. And so I want to capture that piece of it too, like this historical time.
Right.
So you got to have your camera.
I understand it.
Yeah.
That's funny because I never knew that you were a photographer or had that attraction to it, and until now looking at your Instagram and then now talking to you and hearing about that. But I know you as a success coach, a performance coach. Your business is Success is Sweetest, which I just love that title.
Thanks.
How did you even come up with that? No, let's start. Yeah, start from the
Okay.
beginning. How did you even decide to become a career coach?
Okay. Well, I was my friend and colleague Wendy Ward, who ran the.
How we know each other.
That's how we know each other. You were going through career. I mean, you were doing what?
Meisner program. I was at the second year and just about finished, and then she.
Okay.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. So that's awesome. And so Wendy and I had gone through our Meisner training together.
Okay.
So we grew up kind of as actors together.
Yeah.
And she came to me because I was, although on certainly on a small scale, but on that scale, I was doing very well as an actress. Mm-hmm. And she was like, could you share your strategies with my students? And I was like, totally no, I don't know how to do that. I'm like, I don't know what that means. I was really resistant to it. I was like, I don't know how to do that. And she's like, please, they really need it. And so I was like, I relented. And I think it was two people, that I kind of knew. So it was, it was very intimate.
Yeah.
And we did that for 6 weeks. And then we, another 6 weeks, and there was 4 people. Mm-hmm. And then we did that. And then another 6.
Oh, I think you froze. Let's see here. We're going to pause for the cause as we get Janice back because her
6 weeks. And then there was 8 people had a life of its own because people, am I freezing?
You froze, yeah.
My internet.
You're good now. I looked you at, and then there was another 6 weeks, and then.
Yeah. So, it just had it was very, what's the word? It just happens very naturally.
Yeah.
And then I got very serious about it. Then I said, okay, I mean, not right away. I mean, years passed in a way. I mean, I was always very serious about the workshops. I wasn't blowing it off or being, anything but professional, but I was in no way trained to do, in a sense, other than all I was doing was sharing what I had been doing. So it's just, sharing ideas basically. But it was basically, I went to school. I think that's where I left off. I just, I went to school as a coach then. I got trained as a life coach from those workshops because I was challenged by mindset, by people needing more than just career advice. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't prepared to do that. Yeah. I mean, I could do it intuitively, but that's not the same. So I went to school at Coach U, and I did that. That was a 3-year program. And this was really early on. This was in the 90s. So it was still, I knew one other person. In fact, she was a coach that I hired as a career coach.
Yeah.
And so it was still, it hadn't turned into this thing, which it is now. Mm-hmm. So I did that. And I did the workshops with Wendy for about 22 years.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah. So it was a long time, and I worked with a lot of actors, and then, obviously worked with them privately and, and in different ways, and became friends with a lot of those people. Yeah. So that's kind of how that happened. And then I went, later on in the journey, I actually started training in positive psychology.
Oh,
And
okay.
that was sort of a whole other, um, deep dive into, um, positive focus creates a positive reality. That's really what that means. And I was interested. That's an interesting to me.
It is. Was
So
that the Kripalu? Is that what
the
that?
Kapala, yeah,
Kripalu.
yeah. So I got a scholarship, and that was not nearly as long. That was like a 18-month program,
I like
and
that.
most of it was virtual. We had two weeks where we went up to Kripalu, one in the like spring and then one in the fall.
Mhm.
And we stayed there, lived there for a week. It was awesome, amazing.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
positive psychology is very becoming very popular. Um, but it's focusing on appreciating the good, so the good appreciates. That's a really good focus. That what's already working. It just suits me. I like that kind of mindset.
Yeah.
um, so that was a really cool thing. So a lot of that, always have to learn, always learning
Mhm.
new tools.
And how did you come up with the name Success is Sweetest? I think it's
I
perfect
think
name.
I can't, I don't really remember,
Okay.
seriously, to be honest, other than, it's, um, it's in the line of Emily Dickinson's poem. It's part of one of her poems, and I
Mm.
I can't tell you for sure, but I think I kind of stole it from that. I think
Right. I
I
understand.
I was inspired by that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a long time.
It,
And honestly, I have thought of changing it to my name just because it's easier for people to find me, but
right.
someone else has my name. So I
Yeah,
like,
right. That makes sense.
you
Yeah.
know, unfortunately, a lot. And there's a coach that has my name. So it's a lot,
Oh,
and
okay.
spells it exactly the way I do because I have a two N's on my last name. So I'm like, weird. That's so weird. It's such
Yeah.
a small, so
Yeah.
clever. So I haven't changed it.
Yes. I like Success is Sweetest. I think it really hits home knowing as a career coach, this is what I'm going to get is it sounds like ease and grace to me. Like I'm going to learn
Oh,
how
I
to be
love that.
successful with less effort, but just more a smarter approach. That's what it reads to me. That's why I like it so much.
Oh, well, I love that. That's good. No, I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay. So did you tell me how you transitioned into becoming a amateur photographer, although your photos are really great?
Well, I mean, I have been a photographer since I was like a little girl. I mean, I've
Understood.
always been
Yeah.
a photographer in terms of just playing. I've
Mhm.
always had a camera.
Same.
And you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. It's a very girl thing. I mean, I think a lot of girls had a camera and it was like a really creative outlet.
Mhm.
Um, but I I did it and then I didn't do it for as many years. I mean, I walked, I did not pursue photography,
Mhm.
nor am I pursuing photography. Um, but I ran into a really old friend of mine and she was shooting a lot and she got me so inspired. And we started taking little photo trips together. And
Mhm.
she just lit a fire under me. I forgot how much I loved it.
Mhm.
And then I started taking classes at Cooper Union.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, like real with some really great teachers.
Yeah.
And I just, got committed. Now I like take tutorials on YouTube and, wherever I can find a course. And I've even started to submit my photos. Um, I've got one photo published, but as we know, when you submit to anything, whether it's a play or, a movie,
Mhm.
usually there's a great deal of rejection, and that's certainly been my case. And,
Yeah.
no, most people say no. So it's hard to come up with a really good, strong photo project.
Mhm.
It has to be a visual narrative. And I think takes a lot of practice to come up with that.
Just like anything. But I was
Absolutely.
just curious about that, but I want to come back to Success is Sweetest and
Okay.
talk about that, because by the time I met you, I don't know what year you were in at that point, but I feel like you had already done
What year was it?
training.
Do you remember?
Maybe about 2000. I moved here in 2005, so maybe 2003, maybe
Okay.
2003.
Are you kidding? You've been there since 2005?
Yeah.
Oh
So
my
that, yeah.
God. Whoa.
Because you remember when I called you, it was like, can you coach me over the phone? This is pre-site.
Whoa.
And you're like, I think.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Oh, wow. Good for you. Okay. So you're settling in. That's nice.
I settled in nicely, I would say that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's totally been a like natural for you, right?
It has, there are moments that I have to come home at least once a year, if not
Yeah.
twice a year. For many years, I would come home twice a year because I need the energy of New York City and the people and the authenticity of
Yeah.
who New Yorkers and the city are. It's kind of like Hawaii. It's like that land only welcomes good vibes and things like that.
Yes.
But yeah, so when I was finishing that 2-year program, and Wendy shared this idea with us, I had never heard of a career coach before. And so I started looking it up, and it was like, oh, okay, I get that. But I knew that I didn't want to try to navigate becoming an actor. I was reading a lot of books, how to become a working actor, and I was at the drama bookstore all the time and doing that. But I really wanted something more tangible where somebody can coach me through it. And let's see, I just lost my train of thought. I felt like, oh, I know what I was going to say. So because before me becoming an actor, I was a hip hop dancer. I used to do choreographed routines and music videos, and I did not know how to navigate the business side of that. And as a result, I didn't know how to advance my career and just got so frustrated and quit.
Right.
So here it is now that I was becoming an actor. I wasn't going to leave it up to chance to try to figure it out. And
Right.
so Wendy offered you to come in, and you gave us a really great deal as a group package.
Okay.
And I learned so much in terms of how to become,
Yeah.
how to navigate the business.
Business. You're a natural at that though. I mean,
So
you are very interested in that.
interesting.
That makes sense to you, that is interesting to you, and so that's why you've been able to go on and certainly even to educate others, because
Yeah.
you know how to actually advance that
Yeah.
premise, which I mean, and that's not always true for artists though.
Right.
To run a business and their art as a business, but it is a business, all of it is business.
Mhm.
So
Especially since it says show business.
especially since it says show business, I know it's true. And I don't know any art that doesn't have commerce attached to it,
Yeah.
or somebody that's attached to that artist that helps them,
Mhm.
move forward.
Yeah.
Or it happens just accidentally, like for usually someone that's extremely young,
Right.
you know
Yeah.
and then they're just lucked into it, and then they just have the structure around them to help them propel
Yeah.
forward. But most people have to work really hard at it.
Right.
you know
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful that I'm grateful for Wendy Ward and my training, and also
yeah,
for you guys knowing each other, and then I was able to
yeah,
launch a career from there.
I know. And look at you, probably are one of the few that I still know that has stayed in it, because
Oh wow.
people don't stay in it.
Yeah.
And listen, that's you can learn a lot from the education of theater.
Hmm.
Theater is great education. I mean, a great communication education, a great, you learn to listen, and there's a lot to gain that you could take to other fields.
Hmm.
So no harm in that, but it is a very competitive industry. And so people eventually age out, or they just burn out,
Yeah. Right.
you
And I
know?
think at this time they think they age out, but now we're in a world of character actors. But it's always been that way, we
Yes.
still need actors of all ages. Like a girl who I took a class with, and she's probably in her young early 20s. And
Okay.
she was like, hey, I wrote this thing and I need somebody to play my mom. And I don't know anybody that could play my mom. And I'm like, oh, it never occurred to me that this group of people don't even really fraternize with people my age in a way. So it's like, oh, great. And then she's been referring me to other people who need people to
Oh,
play
nice.
moms. So we need
Nice.
people of all ages, because then you need grandmothers and the whole.
No, absolutely. I mean, no question. I mean, there's definitely work.
Yeah.
Not as much
Not
though,
as much. Yeah.
for women.
Mhm.
But it's important to know that, you know, it's not, yes, you don't hit a certain age and then it's done and over with.
Yeah. Right. So we talked about how you got to this portion of your career. So here
Yeah.
we are in quarantine.
Oh yeah, quarantine. So yeah.
Aside from photography, or is it just
Yeah.
photography? What are you doing to stay
So,
creative?
so this is kind of how quarantine went for me. You know, in the beginning, I was, you know, a little freaked out by it. You know, there was some grief, and I was a little uncomfortable with like, oh, geez, what's happening? And then when I kind of got the feeling like this is going to go on for a while, I was like, you know, I wasn't completely comfortable with it.
Mhm.
But I have to say two things really helped me. One, I have a pretty structured morning routine. I have a pretty solid way of like, I get up, I know what I'm going to do.
What's your routine like?
Well, I get up and I think have sent you this in some of our inspirational exchanges. The first thing I do, I get up quite early and I do my Wim Hof breathing exercises. He's awesome. They're free. I found him on YouTube,
Mhm.
but his breathing exercises are no joke. They're hard, and they're
Mhm.
like series of 3 exercises. So I do that, and then I read. I
Mhm.
read usually, you know, I try to read, you know, I I always read 2 books, you know, and I don't put a lot of pressure on myself to read a lot, but I do read.
Mhm.
And then I get up and I exercise. I have an exercise routine. That routine is arm exercises. I did this dance workout, and then I do like this HIIT workout.
Oh,
Um,
great.
yeah, and you know what? That's only like 20 minutes, 22 minutes or something. These are like 5-minute arm, and then 7 minutes, and then totally if anything, I really am a micro, like everything that I build.
Small doses.
Yeah, it works for me. I don't get bored.
Right.
I just, it's a little more flexible.
Mhm.
So, and then I do a little bit of yoga,
Mhm.
and and then I go out on the trail. And so the trail, that was the second half of like what happened to me in quarantine is I live on the Croton Aqueduct Trail,
Mhm.
and I would go out every single day and easily 6 miles a day, if not more, you know. So that was really me walking to Hastings on Hudson and back,
Mhm.
pretty much.
Right.
You know, so, and nothing's open except the grocery store. No one's out there. And I just, you know, just kind of changed my brain. It
Mhm.
really, really opened my heart up, made me feel not afraid, not, you know, just, it took care of me in a way I absolutely did not expect. I really like, whoa, this is a good place to be. This is a very healing place to be, very safe place to be. And then, you know, it's almost dark. It's like time for me to come home and have dinner. And in the beginning, I was going to bed very early. You know, that was kind of my routine, just a little bit of, you know, self-care, reading. I was watching some stuff on Netflix and stuff like that. I wrote down some things that I was watching, but then what really happened though from this like trail, like this sort of walking, not talking is what I was calling it. Um, was I went back, I came home, I started, you know, as the seasons are changing, it's light longer. And then I started going, oh, I want to take classes. So then I just took like every day I took I took classes on essential oils. I took classes on herbs. I took classes on municipal projects like the subway therapy project. I took projects on building e-courses, which I did do. I took classes on New York City, like 5 points.
Where were you taking the classes?
All online. And I was just like, my budget was $10. Seriously.
Love
free.
it.
Yes. And I just like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. So I really got into that. I really, got really got into taking classes. And then believe it or not, I took a course about building e-courses in 40 days.
I love that.
I know.
Was that Sarah or something?
Her name is Leonie Dawson. I can send you the link. Leonie Dawson. Yeah, it's so good. It was $99. She times it, so it's not just any time you can take it.
Yeah.
And there's a reason behind that. She believes it. She said she had it up on her website, and she sold like 5 like in a year, and then if she had a deadline, she sold like 250. That you have to have a deadline, and that makes sense. And
I work best with a deadline. I just don't do well with it.
I bought it like the day before she closed. I was like, I'm finally going to do this. Very good. She's no nonsense, really fun, really, kind of a little potty mouth, but very much who she is. She's from Australia. And what I did is I built an e-course. So what I'm going to do is a whole series of happiness boosters. And I started with cultivating optimism, 6 videos, 20 minutes long. And the next one's going to be savoring, 6 videos, 20 minutes long. These are really inexpensive. So I'm going to do a whole series of happiness boosters. They're all taped, voiceover on slides. Mm-hmm. She was like, just giving us the laydown. You can do it really fancy, or you can do it really, that's me. Yeah, I'm like, I'm going to do the really, like easy to execute.
Yeah.
So I did that. And I guess that's, I read a lot. And I guess that's kind of how I've been spending lockdown.
Yeah. I love that you were drawn to nature.
Yeah.
A few years back, I was taking a financial course with a spiritual component. And one of the things that we were taught was we allow all these outside things to become our source. And then when they don't provide what we need, then we become very fearful and disappointed and all the other stuff. But really our source is nature. And so, and then anything that you believe to be source, whether it's spirit, universe, or divine order, providence, whatever you call it, but nature. So this particular teacher, Jeanette, her last name, I'm blanking on her last name, but she talked about anytime, because she's had lots of money as an executive, and then, just like anything can crumble and, rebirth again. But during those downtimes, she would always take a walk in nature because it was always consistent. Yeah. There's always trees, there's always birds chirping, there's always flowers. And so then remembering that if these things can be provided for, then I can too. So I love the fact that you were drawn to nature during a time where the world felt like it was closing in on you and giving you fear, and then to cycle that many miles a day.
Yeah. Oh, and the birds, I really got into like figuring out and then I would look in, I got into spirit animals. I just kept, everything was like a step in another direction. I started that's how I started thinking about essential oils, because I would pass through little pockets on the trail, and it was like, God, that smells like chocolate. What is that? It was like everything. I was so sensitive, right. And everything felt so alive. And so, the beauty of lockdown, especially lockdown, when the whole entire country, everybody was doing exactly the same thing. It felt like everything slowed down. Okay, I don't have to worry. Tomorrow is good, whatever. I can walk as long as I want, as slow as I want. come home, have dinner, it just felt very easy and very peaceful. So the trail, I mean, I've always, I've always used my bike on this trail.
Right.
I almost didn't bike at all during that time. It was really way more grounding as a walker, just slow, real slow pace. Yeah, it was good. It totally was healing. Absolutely. And I would now, I mean, I've always believed in it, and I've always known this about nature, but now I know that when I'm working with people, it is an intervention. It is a prescription. It is, absolutely. And I would absolutely, it might be how I would coach someone. That might be the one of the treatments, so to speak, because I so believe in it now. Not that I didn't, but it was profound enough to go, it's on the list, in my apothecary, my tools of like intervention. Yes, it is absolutely. Absolutely.
I like the way you talked about how the quarantine, you went through stages, because like we're not planning to go through stages, but there are these moments where it's that the onset of it is almost debilitating for some in a way. For me, it was, because it's like, what is happening, what? And then there's that moment where you find something that you can do that may be a new habit or something. And then it evolves into the next thing, and then another wave. And I feel like so many people are just interested in things that they never even thought of being interested in before, because we have this space to be still and allow our subconscious and the collective subconscious to rise to the surface and give us ideas and downloads and new information.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely was inspired by people. I saw some woman on, say that she did a cacao ceremony. I'm like, wow, what's that? I want to do that. And I didn't do it, but believe me, I went to the internet and I looked at every single thing there was on it. And I've been like, I will do it someday. That's definitely on my list. So I was definitely inspired by how other people were using their time. I felt very much, the internet, obviously social media was very important to me because, I'm alone and I wanted to connect. I was very moved all the time by people. I was often very, very moved by how people were processing the experience. I mean, it's profound. And then when I started going into the city, I started going in a little probably earlier than some people, but it was still, we were like in phase 3. So we were like allowed to, and that's when I started taking pictures, because I wanted to really, and I did go to the Black Lives Matter marches, and I did, I really wanted to start documenting it. I wasn't able to do as early as I would have liked to, like a lot of the frontline stuff, the workers, because I'm not close enough to do that, but very, very profound. And I'm guessing you probably can guess, but the city has been devastated by this. There's a lot of industries that aren't coming back. They just couldn't make it past, could not shut down, and then, for whatever 4 months. So there's a lot of institutions that made New York, a lot of mom and pop.
Yes, a lot. Yeah, we're known for that.
They just didn't have they don't have the bank and
or the infrastructure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's going to require a lot of imagination and passion. My hope is that it actually, like in the 70s when New York City went bankrupt, one of the great things that happened, because there was a lot of scary things that happened during that time, but one of the great things that happened was the artistic renaissance.
Exactly, which I think is happening again.
Yes, I agree. I mean, because the artists always take advantage of that vacuum.
Yeah.
So that's my hope. We'll start seeing theater in storefronts again because there's so much real estate and whatever.
Yeah.
Except for there's no theater. I mean, that's what's different about this, because it being a pandemic, that the arts where people would normally gravitate to, I mean, obviously they have online, but I mean, they're shut down. So it's weird that way. Like that piece of it is radical.
Right.
It's a radical piece of it, but they're going to come back and it'll be different and hopefully better, because some of that was broken too.
Yeah, totally.
You know?
I like that it's causing a lot of companies and organizations to create a new way to present. So, for instance, the Labyrinth Theater did Our Lady of 121st Street, and it was, I think it was a table read.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with like really prominent actors who maybe have originated the roles many years ago.
Oh, I love that.
And they just did it for a day to raise money for the theater, and they let it sit there for a day, and then they took it down.
Yeah.
So I to be here in New York, to be here in LA, but to still be able to get that good Labyrinth Theater, you know.
Totally. That's great. I saw that 124th Street. I saw that. I think I saw it at, I saw it someplace near Union Square. I remember that. I remember taking my sister to that.
Yeah.
No, that was amazing.
One of my favorite, plays.
Yeah, cool. You know, because I really haven't heard much from the Labyrinth in a while. I mean, honestly, since Philip Seymour Hoffman passed away, it kind of little by little
kind of got quiet.
So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. Well, they're trying to maintain it anyway, probably like most theaters. But yeah, I feel like this definitely is a renaissance of artists, whether it's those of us that have already been practicing it or those who just never allow themselves to be and are probably starting to open up to the possibility of, because we are all artists, we're all creatives. It's just that we have to take a path sometimes to sustain a living and raise a family and all that.
Well, right. That's right. I mean, that's right. And even that, some of that's going to change. I mean, some people are going to be able to, you know, there might be some more flexibility in how people and where people get to do their work. You know, obviously that's a big change, you know, I mean, I don't know when the office buildings are going to.
Yeah, I know. Right.
You know, they may not.
Those who are at home working and making it work, it's going to be hard to probably go back into an office from 9 to 5 when you can essentially, like my stepdad is dealing with that now. He's been working from home, and so.
It seems like they're out on the street all over, though. Are they? But his work is.
He's in a higher position, yeah. So it's like he's the person that everybody goes to like, how do we move this obstacle? Because he was really smart early on. As soon as he works for Con Edison, so as soon as he got into that job, he started learning how he can elevate and take all the tests to move up. Move up. And so thankfully he had that vision, and so now he's at home, and he also has some health conditions that he has to really be concerned with. So, but it's been great for him to be able to work from home because, you know, they're now in New Jersey, and you don't have to make that commute, and that toll alone. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a change of lifestyle for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
quality of life is going to be different.
Yeah. So but then, so then what happens to all those buildings, those office buildings?
Oh gosh, I didn't think about that.
I mean, what really happens? What happens to Manhattan? Or LA. I mean, I'm just curious. I mean, I'm just like, I don't know what's gonna go down in terms of like having office buildings empty for maybe years.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a change. It's a very interesting change, and cities will have to. I mean, you know, I mean, I hope it doesn't last too long, you know, because I honestly really don't want to see New York go into bankruptcy.
Yeah, nobody wants to see that.
No, because that means like you know, you don't have any police, you don't have any firemen, you don't have your train stops working, and
Yeah. Oh,
you
God.
know, I
Right.
mean, no one picks up your garbage, and you know, it's not,
Yeah.
you know,
We
I
know
don't
what it's like, and it's not very enticing.
know. I mean, some of it was interesting. There was a lot of really interesting things I mean, I wasn't here in the 70s. I got here in 84. And it was very vibrant, but I also remember walking down First Avenue and people selling hash and drug. I mean, it was like just common. It was just regular. Yeah. And you wouldn't
Red
even
City. Yeah.
dare. Avenue A, B, and C were just completely off limits. They were so dangerous after a certain hour.
Yeah.
You know, so it's very interesting. Anyway, I mean, it honestly, it could kind of go in that direction
Yeah.
a
Well,
little bit.
we will practice positive psychology. Is that
Yeah,
what?
that's right. Everybody's people are going to need to hire that. People are going to need to hire positive psychologists to get through the.
Yeah, we will stay. Well, one thing I know for sure, because I grew up in the South Bronx in the 70s,
Well, there you go.
it was deemed Little Beirut because it was just burnt down buildings or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
New York is just a resilient city. So even
Yeah.
no matter what we go through, we still, we band together. I say
Yeah.
we, even though I'm not there, I'm still a New Yorker. We band together and we build a city together. So, and then something new comes, you know, is birthed from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, so are you seeing any of this in LA? Because I'm not hearing that it's like impacting LA the same way.
I'm not truly paying a whole lot of attention. I do have some friends of friends who are restaurateurs who are struggling, but they've been finding really smart ways to sell groceries in bulk, and making dishes that you can buy and then you can make them at home. So a lot of places have gotten really smart about it. But I don't know. I'm not really paying attention.
Yeah.
Because
No, I think the whole food scene is really going to be like exploding in terms of like how they, as they say, pivot, you know, and this whole sort of to go, like smaller portions and little, you know, ways of rethinking the industry is very interesting.
Yeah. I know, I feel like though in LA, the infrastructure has always been there in terms of being able, like if I'm thinking about restaurants, to be able to go from maybe just dine-in service, but I'd say the majority of all the restaurants here, even the mom and pop stores, really got quick to some sort of what do you call it? Pickup service, Uber, all those things. And I was listening to a podcast with Jeffrey Wright talking about, because he lives in Brooklyn.
Yes.
And he said that, did you hear this podcast? I don't know.
No, I love Jeffrey Wright. And he's awesome. I follow him on Twitter. Love it.
Yeah. And you may have seen this because there was a little shop that he goes to and he frequents when he's not working, and he goes in there, he plays chess and he drinks whiskey, and he knew that he wanted that place to be there when the pandemic ended. And so he asked the owner, how are you going to be able to do pickup service or delivery? And the guy was like, oh, I'll be fine or whatever. And then once the quarantine really hit, he was like, I only had 4 orders. And so then Jeffrey worked to, and I would need to figure out the podcast so I can probably link it here. But basically he did like a crowd fund with a few community restaurants, and then there was an Italian restaurant, I think a pizza shop that was already thriving, and he reached out to them. And basically what they were doing was they were taking donations, but then they were feeding the essential workers, and then that just really grew the business, so they were all able to sustain themselves. But that's somebody who loved his little neighborhood spot, and it's like, I want this to be here when I come back.
Yeah.
So,
I've seen some, I guess, I mean, you would definitely, Jeffrey Wright is an influencer, so he helped. He was able to,
because his first major donation was the guy who now plays James Bond, that actor.
I know who you're talking about.
I see his face and I can't even think of his name.
I know who you're talking
but
about.
That was his first contribution. It was like $5,000 or something like that.
Yeah, his friends, That helps a lot. No,
Yeah.
but I've seen a couple people, like, certainly not on that level, but definitely have a following and have helped some small businesses that way, you know, starting some GoFundMe and just asking people to shop at small bookstores or at this Army and Navy place. And it's just super cool. You know, people just like banding together and going and, you know, buying a book or buying a hat. And it's like, I'm up for that.
Yeah, same here.
You know, a lot of people are months behind in rent, you know, months behind in rent. And now it's coming due and they're like, I don't have any foot
Probably be done by now. Well, so we're coming to the end of our call.
Hey.
So great. And you mentioned that you have these e-courses coming up. So
okay, so if you go to my site, you'll see that I have 3 offerings. One, you know, 2 are my in-person coaching offerings, and then it says coaching in a box, and it's cultivating optimism is my first one. And it's only $10, so it's really, yeah. And it's really rough. I mean, I think it's really good content. It's very short, but that's what I'm doing. And I'm going to, you know, I'm going to keep building on it. Like I said, I'm going to do savoring is my next one, which is considered a positive psych intervention. And then I'm going to do acts of kindness and just keep going, you know. And I haven't really put it out there yet, but I guess I did. And I will start to put it out there because I've been still tweaking it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, you'll always be tweaking it, but
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's it, my dear. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for coming on, Janice. This is a great talk.
Awesome.
I learned so much about you that I didn't know.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Oh, I'm so glad. I never know how an interview is going to go because
no one knows. That's the greatness of a casual conversation, because then it doesn't have to follow these lines and be perfect. We can just chat.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And, you know, I look forward to seeing how this all rolls out.
Yes.
So thanks for including me.
Me too.
Okay. Yeah, I guess. That's cool. All right. Bye, my dear.
Bye.
Okay. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Creators in Quarantine. Just a couple of New York girls having a chat. Check out Janice at successissweetest.com. I love that she's doing street photography. Follow her on Instagram. Her photos are great. And if you learned something new here, you really should subscribe. Like, share, but subscribe.